It's my pleasure to welcome one of Canada's most famous Newfoundlanders to the show. You know him for about 20 years. He was the lead singer of Great Big Sea, and since then been singing and writing on his own. If you saw Ridley Scott's Robin Hood about 15 years ago, a movie that I just recently saw again, you'll see his wonderful performance in that as well. But he's also an author with his fourth book. It's called The Smiling Land. I'm talking, of course, about Alan Doyle, who's graciously accepted an early morning interview here from Newfoundland. I guess not as early in Newfoundland, is it?
I'm actually coming to you from Toronto today.
Oh, are
I'm
you?
in
Okay, so you're an
halfway
hour
there, for
ahead.
God's sake, and but not so bad. But yes, I'm stoked to have the book out. It's a love letter to my home province, and it's sort of like the way I pitched it to the publisher a while back was, follow me around Newfoundland and Labrador because I knows everything about Newfoundland and Labrador, and then watch me discover I don't know very much about Newfoundland and Labrador at all.
Turns out you
And
didn't.
turns out I didn't. Yeah.
Let's talk first about your background as a tour guide. I just found this out. You did some sort of guided tours when you were
A
younger. Tell
lot,
us a little
yeah, a
about
lot.
that.
I mean, in my very young life, of course, I worked on the wharves, when I was 10, 11, and 12 and stuff in Petty Harbour, the way most people did. But then when I was 16, I got this one of the greatest breaks of my life. A teacher told me that they were looking for, talkative young students to go be tour guides at the Newfoundland Museum in St. John's. And so I went and did an interview for it and I got the job. And as miracle of miracles would happen, a Doyle was about to get paid for talking, and like that's like one of the greatest achievements ever in our family lineage, I think. And I started working at the Newfoundland Museum in St. John's in 1985, and I worked there until like 1994. Like a year after Great Big Sea started, I still had that job because I loved it so much, and I didn't want to let it go. And I just loved, learning about Newfoundland and Labrador, and especially about telling people from other parts of the world about what a cool spot we got. I've never lost my love for that kind of hosting tour guiding job, and lots of it is reflected in this book.
Yeah, I've learned more about Newfoundland than I ever did in school. I've read the book. It is remarkable in that you take so much time out of your life to travel around and learn and then share it. 15 chapters in here, all of them filled with great stories of travel. First of all, it seems, I mean, being from Manitoba, you get in the car and you drive in a relative straight line, a few hours in any direction to get where you're going. In fact, you can let go of the wheel for extended periods of time if you wanted to. It's so straight. But nothing like that in Newfoundland. In fact, it seems a
Oh,
little exhausting to travel through the province.
one of my takeaways from it was even I wasn't totally prepared for the massive distances between sparsely populated towns in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's enormous. It's a territory of a province, I always say.
Hmm.
And we got in a domestic minivan and drove it from St. John's all the way to the northern tip of Newfoundland, and then got on a ferry and drove it across southern Labrador and went to Battle Harbor, you know, which is about the same distance as getting in your car and driving to Winnipeg, for something like that. But it's a vast, sparsely populated, beautiful, strange, weird, challenging, beautiful place.
And
And
you start to think about Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, for that matter. Uh, how did they survive in such
yeah,
remote, sparsely populated towns
yeah.
and
And some of the,
hamlets?
and even some of the more populated places and sort of successful places, in Newfoundland are hard, and they're challenging, and they're windy, and they're rocky, and they're, even St. John's itself, or Bonavista. I mean, it's so far out in the ocean, you got to turn around and come in to fish. It's like it's really, really a remarkable place, to to call home, and to it's no you would have to work so hard to make it work there that it's no wonder we become people who are so attached to our, to our little hamlets here and there and everywhere.
It is remarkable. And how do you feel about probably being the first in your ancestry to travel through the province as much as you did?
Oh, well, that's one of the great privileges of my life, isn't it? I mean, when I was 14 years old, I wanted two things. I wanted to get in a band for a living, and I wanted to travel. And as luck would have it, those two things go hand in hand, especially in Canada. And I've lived a very privileged life ever since, and that I include traveling around my own province in that, as well as traveling around this great country and many countries in the world and stuff. And it's just what a blessing it has been to be able to see so much stuff, but then to turn that eye back on your own backyard, right? And like, I've spent so many decades telling people about Newfoundland, and telling people what a great spot it is. I figured I should actually go make sure I can check it out for myself, because some of the places I'd never been or hadn't been in a very long time, and it was like, and of course, the Newfoundland of my childhood, which was firmly rooted in the inshore fishery, that all that changed when I became a young adult. I mean, right around when Great Big Sea started is when, the big cod moratorium happened in Newfoundland. And it was like, well, all the and towns, including the one that I was born into in Petty Harbor, had to re-establish themselves. Like they had to sort of justify why they were there, like, and I thought it was a cool thing for this Mining Land book to drive around Newfoundland and Labrador and to find examples of successful towns that have paved a way forward despite some intense hardships over the years.
Well, you talk about the ability for Newfoundlanders to adapt when things change to such an
Yeah,
extent.
you have to, right? Like when you live on a rock in the middle of the ocean, you get up in the morning and you do whatever the day asks of you, right? Because you don't know what it's going to ask of you, and you have great plans about, you know, doing something outside or doing something, but then the wind might shift literally, and you're on to something else, and I love that about the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, is that they're you know they're flexible, and they're pliable, and they're you have to be easygoing, because the best medicine for hard times is being easygoing.
And and you have to be happy or be able to choose to be happy while doing it. In fact, the book The Smiling Land comes from the song Ode to Newfoundland.
Yeah, it was from the original poem that was Sir Cavendish Boyle, penned, which became sort of the national anthem, of Newfoundland. And um, I was just wondering, well, why did he call it the Smiling Land? And does it still smile? And why do we smile? And why, and that's one of the questions I try to answer in the book, and have a bit of fun doing it too, like driving around Newfoundland and then taking opportunities to pass comment on some of the weirdnesses and the peculiarities that I think makes our place and people unique and special.
Well, let's dive into a tiny bit of it here, just to give the listeners a taste of the book. The first chapter is called Farewell to Fogo, and it's not a sentiment, it's an itinerary. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, the place, I just, there's so many things. You've probably heard me say before, and many people say, especially from that you couldn't make it up, right? Like that whole saying of you couldn't make this stuff up,
Right.
right? Well, the place where you get on the boat to go to Fogo Island is called Farewell. Like it's like, and it's, if there's not a more appropriate dock in the world, I don't know what you would call it.
Right.
And so, yeah, Fogo Island is probably the best example of a place that is constantly reinvented itself as, economy and societal changes have demanded. It was, a whaling and sealing, uh, fortress for generations, and then it shifted to the cod fishery, and then it shifted from that to ecotourism, and it's shifting again, and it's constantly reimagining itself because the people on there love it so much that they can't see anything other than staying there. And there is a beauty in that to me that is worth writing about and worth celebrating, and investigating, going to go see it, go see Fogo Island, and just and ask yourself the question of, of how they managed to make this work, and yet they do, and it's been lovely.
And you mentioned the ferry. Get ready for a fairly long ferry ride.
Well, if you're going to do any traveling in, to Newfoundland and Labrador, you better get ready for a few boats, and they're not small ones.
Tell us about that ferry ride, though.
The ferry ride from Farewell to Fogo, is an hour and a bit, and on a good day, and you go right out into the North Atlantic Ocean, right? So hopefully it's great, and hopefully it's good, and the people from the tourism department of Newfoundland and Labrador will be mad at me for telling you that it's not excellent, anything but fantastic all the time. But I'll let you decide for yourself if you think a boat going out into the North Atlantic in February is awesome. And it's but it's one of the cool things about it, right? It's like it's challenging, and it's rugged, and it makes for a people that are resilient and fun and for lack of a better term, kind of bulletproof, and I love that about it.
Steely
Yeah.
hearted. So, us landlubbers would know the name Fogo from the song. You actually acknowledge that in the book, that we've probably heard about Fogo as part of...
We're all around the circle.
Exactly, yeah. And all around the circle, to a young mind in elementary school, to me sounded like a dance. We're singing the song, we're dancing. It's not. All around the circle is Fogo, Twillingate, Morton's Harbor, and you kind of make that trip as great. Well, talking about the remoteness of each place, getting to and from. It's a tourism sort of manual. I spent a lot of time on Google Imaging looking up the names in this book. Yeah. And, I recommend that to anybody who's, because we have the capacity to do that now, we might as well go along with you on this trip, and look at the images online. But you learned just as much or more than you thought about your own home province. Yeah. What was that like? Was that humbling? Obviously, you're happy to do it, and you took your wife and your son along. What a great opportunity for your son as well.
Oh, it's fantastic. It was like, well, he's 19 now, so he was like 17 or 18 when we did most of this traveling, and we just kind of figured that it was probably the last time we're going to convince him to go anywhere with us for a while. So,
exactly, yeah.
So we wanted to show him where he was from, and quite frankly, like you say, that there was so many places and so many experiences that I had never had. Like about half of the book is filled with places that I'd never been to. Like I'd never driven north of Grossmore National Park in Newfoundland and Labrador. I'd never got in a car and drove up to up to Snatney and to the very northern tip of Newfoundland and Lanson Meadows and all that stuff. And I'd never driven there, and those experiences were amazing. And I'd never really in the daylight driven to the south part, down to Port aux Basques, where the ferry comes in, and even around the corner to Rose Blanche and all those places. And so half of the book was me going to places that I spoke about and have been talking about for a long time, especially like Lanson Meadows at the Newfoundland Museum and stuff, the famous Viking site. But I'd never been there,
right?
And Red Bay in Labrador is another one, and just like these places that I've spoken about that I'd never been to, and so I figured I should go. And then it was also a joyous thing to go back to places like Harbor Grace, where I've been many times, but probably not in a long time, and just to look at it with a lens of like, what do they do here now? Like what's happening here now? I know the history of this place and why it used to be here, but what happens here now? Like and I found that very exciting and interesting, and I just thought it would be fun to take people along, and that's exactly what we do in this book.
So there are a couple of things that I'd like to pull out here, but if time allows, I want you to be able to talk about Foley's Shed, but I want you to try to convey it, if somebody listening is closing their eyes and experiencing it the same way you did the first time you went to Foley's Shed.
it is a remarkably magic trick of a building that I can only like. It has a similar physical trait. Do you know those like European dolls where there's a big one and there's a smaller one
Yeah,
inside the big one and then a smaller one inside that one and a small
nested.
one?
Yeah, nested
Kind of,
dolls.
Holy Shed has the opposite effect. It looks tiny. You just walk in this little shed and in two steps and a turn around the corner, you're in the greatest Irish pub that you've ever seen in your life. And it's filled with people singing and dancing and music and guitars and bowrons and a room next to a room that leads to a bigger room. And the next thing you know, you have no idea how you got in here and no idea how you could possibly get out. And it's like and it's just a joyous filled experience
And why would you
to
want to leave?
why would you want to leave? Yeah. Where because the sun can't find you in there, and that's a really good thing. And it's just Foley Shed is probably the biggest, um, sort of example of an exaggerated example and a fully realized example of the shed culture of Newfoundland, which is quickly becoming the new kitchen, right? In modern Newfoundland, if we used to always gather in the kitchens, now people love gathering in the sheds just as much, and I love that. And Foley Shed is probably the Cadillac of party shed experiences.
That's awesome. I think would be unfair if we didn't talk a little bit about Labrador.
Yeah,
Sort of to me anyway, an unknown sort of
me too. I
outcropping,
mean, for
of
most, I
Canada.
mean, for most people, yeah, like even for people from our province, like I mean, it's vast. Like it is, like if you think the island of Newfoundland is big, check out the landmass of Labrador. Like it is enormous and, has somewhere around, I think it's like 31 or 32,000 people in the entire place.
Yeah.
Like it is um, filled with like a treasure chest of natural resources, hydroelectric possibilities, mining, the ocean itself is close. Like it's just incredibly rich land. And no wonder Newfoundland and Quebec have been fighting over it for as long as we've been in close to each other.
Right.
And yet it has very, 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 very few people in it, right? And it even has, it has about 30,000 people in there now. And I would say, I'm in trouble for guessing here, but it's somewhere more, definitely two-thirds of the people who are there have, have been living there for less than two generations. It's and in modern industry have brought that many people there, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so it's this beautiful, vast land um, that most of us will never get to experience and see. Yet there is a few ways to do it if you got the gumption to go at it. And we did. And you take the ferry from northern Newfoundland and you do this crazy thing where you actually land in the province of Quebec. And so your clock jumps back 90 minutes. Then you drive 20 feet across the Newfoundland Labrador border and it jumps back 90 minutes. And and then you find yourself driving across the moonscape of the Southern Labrador Highway, which might be the most impossible piece of road I've ever driven on in my life. And I've driven on lots of them. And it is just a constant jaw-dropping experience to wonder how they ever put this road here, how they ever maintain it in the winter, how it ever was, could possibly last. And it's just like, it feels like a road. I think I describe it in the book. It feels like a road, like in a science fiction movie that some multi-billionaire built to the egg, rocket
Right.
during the last days of time, where we'll drive to get on the egg to go to the safe, space station or whatever, like, and it's just an incredibly beautifully bleak thing, and makes you feel very small, I tell you. And the only vehicles that pass you every now and again are like, survivalist jeeps or guys, on motorcycles with the with the bags on the side and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
We're puttering along. They're in our Honda Odyssey.
Where actually your wife Joanne's doing most of the driving
Oh
anyway,
God,
isn't she?
yes, yes, she won't let me drive. No, nor should anyone ever.
So, how do you wrap your head around that? Where do you come to in your mind when you are, well, traveling across the province, but especially in Labrador, when you think about the people and the past generations of the whatever the time and the labor that it took to make something? Where do you end up in your head?
Just lucky, lucky to have been born into it, right? Lucky
Hmm.
to have been born into this place that has that kind of energy and resilience and stubbornness, you know, uh, because in an ever-changing, you know, world of expectations and possibilities and job options and opportunities, those things will remain, you know, essential, right? You
Right.
know, lots of skills that were important 20 years ago won't be important 20 years from now. But when will hard work ever be useless to you? When will a hearty, good sense of humor not be a great thing to have? When will resilience and the ability to smile during hard times not be a great thing to have in your arse pocket? And that's where I'm from.
Makes you proud.
Yeah. Yeah. And lucky, lucky as much as proud, to be honest with you. I just feel like what a great twist of fate to have been born into that.
That survival and that drive it's baked in. It's in the DNA.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like our parents did it and our grandparents did it. And here we go.
Really great, Alan. We've run out of time. I want to remind people the Smiling Land, all around the circle, in My Newfoundland and Labrador, is the name of the new book. And you will be here next weekend. First of all, you're coming to the Grey Cup celebrations and you're playing at
Oh
the
yeah.
kitchen party.
So fun. I've done that sort of, rally a few times in different, I think I might have even done it in Winnipeg one time, years ago with GBS maybe. And they're always great fun. And yeah, and then we're having the book event at the
McNally Robinson.
Robinson, yeah, place. And then as I whispered about, there may be another appearance coming up in March, but I'll tell you about that in a couple of weeks.
That's still kind of hush hush. Well, you heard
That's
it
right.
here first. Yeah. Well,
Heard
Alan,
it there first.
all the best to you. It's your fourth book, and congrats. And we'll see you here next week.
Thanks for everything. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.